explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name. As the expression goes, be careful what you wish for, 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 wish for. When I get back into the Oval Office, we will totally obliterate the deep state. To the class of 2017, that's some achievement. This is your day, and you've earned every minute of it, graduating to a totally brilliant future. Someday we're going to have to write a book about this one. Would really require major help from God. Do we agree? And we got it. But here we are celebrating together on this very joyous occasion. And I accepted this invitation a long time ago that I'd be there. And when I say something, I mean it. But we will not be intimidated. We will persevere. We will stand tall in the storm. We will march forward into the torrent. And we, in the end, will win. Our country will win. We will win. There's another group of amazing people we want to celebrate today. And they are the ones who have made this journey possible. Today is your day. Today is your day. We're profoundly grateful to every single one of you who sacrificed to keep us safe and to protect God's precious gift of freedom. We will persevere. We will stand tall in the storm. We will march forward into the torrent. And we, in the end, will win. To the class of 2017, today you end one chapter, but you are about to begin the greatest adventure of your life.
What great warriors of the past have done. And what I'll say is great warriors of the past are peacemakers. President Trump is a peacemaker. When he rebuilds the military, it is not for the purpose of warfare. It is the purpose of peace through strength. Because if you don't have the credibility and the will to use force against somebody evil that is trying to kill human nature, kill freedom, and this innate God-given important gift of free will, then people will just walk all over you.
Yeah.
You have to be unapologetic. And we are moral creatures, okay? God made us as moral creatures. So if you have a governance system like communism that does not believe in a God, it will eventually crumble as it tries to control people. But our Constitution is so unique in history. And this is why I'm so excited about being alive at this time and why we should be so happy to be able to usher in a more prosperous, healthy, and secure future where all people on the planet have a chance to live free and with free will. Because we have a constitution rooted in a worldview that there is a God. And he has planted in our hearts certain things that are essential, like free will. And we have values of loving our God first and our neighbors as God loves us. And then policies and an economy that thrives on this ability for people to act and do and try. The free economy. It's our superpower as an American society based on these values and on this worldview. I think about it like a flashlight. If we do this right, even with quantum, if we can operationalize quantum, Or we can operationalize truth discovery in the current model of the internet and of the techniques for communication we have. It's like shining a flashlight on all the dark corners of history and of the world right now where evil can hide. Mm-hmm. They can enslave people. They can traffic people. They can launder money. Corruption can thrive in the dark corners. But if we believe there are more people on the planet that are good and would rather love their neighbor than kill their neighbor, we can gang up on this small number of evil people that are prioritizing their own control, their own money, and their own security by enslaving others.
Gentlemen, there is no longer any ground for hope. If we wish to be free, if we wish to preserve inviolate those inestimable privileges which belong to us as free men, Aye. If we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, in which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our struggle be obtained, then we must fight. I repeat it, sir. We must fight. The appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all we have left us.
Arms, Mr. Henry. What arms? We are weak, sir.
They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so powerful an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week? Or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and a British Guard shall be stationed in every house? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs, hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemy hath bound us hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means the God of nature hath placed in our power. 3 millions of people armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country that which we possess, are invincible by any force our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations, who will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Besides, sirs, we have no election. Should we be base enough to desire it, it is now already too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat, but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged, their clanking may be heard upon the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come!
Mr. Henry, we speak for peace, sir!
It is in vain to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that blows from the north shall bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that they wish? What would they have? Is life so dear? Or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death!
Well said. To arms! To arms!
Welcome, everybody, to Brad and Abbey Live. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I was like sitting here almost crying, just feeling what he was portraying and how he was speaking in that way. And take these headphones off. I can't tell if I'm yelling. They're like sound cancellation. So the first clip, yes, as you guys know, that was General Quast interview with Sean Ryan. Yeah, guys, please let me know if my sound is coming through. I got to check these days because every half the time it's not. So give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. And give me a thumbs up in general for the show because this is going to be a fun one. I know a lot of people might be like, well, how does this intertwine with the title of the show, which is Global Residence, Synthetic Consciousness, and Information Transfer from the Human Brain? It will all come together. And so there's a reason why I played that. So first you saw General Quast's interview with Sean Ryan, and then you saw Patrick Henry's Liberty or Death speech, which is absolutely so powerful. And I was reading up on it a little bit, and because of his speech, it swayed them enough to decide to fight for our country. So imagine, if he was the one grain of rice that tipped that scale, right? And we're going to get into this with global consciousness. And when we reach a certain precipice, things can happen. So Patrick Henry, super instrumental in us being here today, as we are. General Quast, the way he talks about we have to move forward, but if we do not have these main core principles like God, like Henry was saying, it's going to be futile. We're not going to be able to continue. We ourselves will enslave ourselves, right? Because we're fighting a true evil out here. So I wanted to start out with these two clips to display mindset. You guys, want you to just think about, what did you feel after you watched that? You felt powerful. You felt patriotic, right? You felt, you know what he is saying is right. I agree with that. You started resonating with what he was saying. So the mindset of our founding fathers and amazing patriots like General Quast, you saw, they understood and understand God's moral principles and how standing for what is good and true is like the most heroic, patriotic thing that you can do, right? Preserving moral values like liberty and freedom, right? Freedom. That is what this is all about. And he says that those things need to be awarded to the people that are vigilant, active, and brave. And not everybody might be physically like, I can fight a battle. And again, we're not talking about war per se, but we're talking about the resistance, right? You can be at all different, you could be a person in different walks of life, and there's a way you can influence the world around you. And that's really what this whole episode is about. So because I'm going to have to crunch this all in, I'm going to be very quick about it. So what's going to happen is, let's scroll down. Oh, actually, you know what? First, before we dive into this, let's hear from our sponsors, and they're super awesome and super wonderful. And then we will dive into global resonance, synthetic consciousness, and information transfer of the human brain. Look who's back, Manly Cans, and just in time for Father's Day. Manly Cans is the ultimate destination for spoiling the guys with cool stuff they actually want. Each Manly Can is an experience and even a greeting card that doubles as a coaster. Customize your manly can to fit his personality. Choose from a wide variety of cans, and during checkout, add additional items to make it just right for him. Spoil all the dads in your life. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/manlycans and use promo code badlandsmedia for free shipping on purchases over $50. That's badlandsmedia.tv/manlycans, promo code badlandsmedia.
I'm excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, My Pillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great, and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
Thank you so much. Our sponsors, Mike Lindell. This is super awesome. Looks like a cool drink. I like energy drinks. All right. So, guys, here we go. Tonight's episode is going to be fun. If you guys want to know more about these fun things, global resonance, synthetic consciousness, and information transfer from the human brain. So, this is what I did. I took a pretty long lecture by Michael Persinger, is his name, and he is speaking at the Laurentian University. It's in Ontario, Canada. Now, I cut it into 6 supercut segments to make it easier to digest because it is a lecture. So I'm watching this and I'm like, this is so great, but a lot of people don't have that attention span. So I'm hoping this will be a really cool, shareable episode for you guys to put out there for people that are interested into this, or even just kind of like dabbling, like, I wonder if this is real. Is this hocus pocus? Is this woo woo? Well, I can tell you, I don't think so. And it's really super exciting. So, yeah, I was going to pull up his credentials, but I don't want to run out of time. He's an American Canadian professor. Let's share this real quick, actually. Here we go. Share. All right. I don't know if you can see this. Let's make this smaller. Like, I won't spend too much time. I just want you guys to see. Michael A. Persinger. Okay, he was American Canadian professor of psychology at the Laurentian University, a position he held from 1971 until his death in 2018. His best known hypothesis include the temporal lobes of the human brain as the central correlate for mystical experiences. Subtle changes in geomagnetic activity as where did I lost my spot? Subtle changes in geomagnetic activity as mediators of parapsychology phenomenon, the tectonic strain with the Earth's crust as the source of luminous phenomena attributed to unidentified aerial objects. So this guy's like going way out and all kinds of stuff. And the importance of specific quantifications for energy. It's talking about joules and things like that. Photon flux density, small shifts in magnetic field intensities for integrating cellular activity, as well as human thought with universal phenomena. So you guys kind of get an idea about this guy. He's definitely qualified. And in fact, I mean, I guess maybe he didn't work directly with the CIA, but pretty much. He worked with a guy that was involved in Project Stargate and actually helped the CIA track some people down, but I won't spill the beans. So without further ado, this is part 1 of his presentation called No More Secrets.
This is the human brain as you probably have seen on many occasions, but in actual fact, that's not the real human brain. The human brain is alive, and if you measured it, this is what it would look like. Those flashing patterns you see there are the actual activity of a real brain. We've taken an EEG, quantified it, and we can actually see the activity taking place over the left and right hemispheres. The yellow and the red that you see is effectively what's going on as the person is sitting quietly. There's microstates going on here, being recreated every 20 milliseconds, 50 times a second. There are about 4 basic microstatic patterns, which are the building blocks to consciousness. So the question is, suppose you have had access to information within every other person's brain, and they had access to yours. What would happen? Has it happened? Can it happen? And what would it mean for the future of human societies? No more secrets. And tonight, that's exactly what we're talking about. Are we all connected? And the answer is yes. We are all immersed in the Earth's magnetic field. The human species is about 7 billion conductive brains, all sharing this field. Think of 7 billion wires, all immersed in the Earth's magnetic field. This field contains enough energy to store the experience of every human being who has ever lived. All the information of every human brain that's ever lived has the potential to be stored in the Earth's magnetic field with lots of energy left over. There's the Earth's magnetic field. You've seen it on many occasions. In fact, the strength of the magnetic field induced in every brain, right now you're being induced, to put it this way, you are immersed in the Earth's magnetic field, is penetrating through your brain, through your body. And in fact, the strength of the magnetic field induced in every brain by the Earth's magnetic field, when all brains are considered, is almost identical to the strength that each brain generates. Your brain generates in the order of about a picotesla, which is about a trillionth of a Tesla, much weaker than the Earth's magnetic field. But that's the operational intensity. But what does it mean? It means simply this. Such convergence produces the conditions that allow global resonance and the possibility of a human hologram. That is, 7 billion brains, basically immersed in the Earth's magnetic field, all with similar intensities. Calculations suggest that the time required for an event in one human brain to diffuse into all other human brains on this planet would be about 10 minutes. And it would recur primarily during dreams or during altered states. In other words, you can actually calculate it. 7 billion brains is an easy calculation. One brain, something you're thinking about right now, how long would it take if we're all connected to diffuse to every other human brain on this planet? About 10 minutes, and optimally during dreaming, when the right hemisphere is dominant. So here's how it would look in terms of an animation. Effectively, there's the representation of the 7 billion brains, almost 7 billion. And ultimately, this connection would take place over time in roughly about 10 to 15 minutes, particularly if you were dreaming, because there's something very different about the right side of the brain, the right hemisphere. Now, has there been evidence that such connections occur? Yes, for decades, verified cases indicate that some people's sudden experiences about a crisis to or death of a loved one occurs on days when geomagnetic activity is quietest. The experiences usually occur during a dream state. Let me give you an example. On the evening of the 5th January, I was visiting, this is from a middle-aged woman, this is one of many cases. These kinds of cases have been recorded certainly since the 1870s. Massive booklets containing this information. On the evening of the 5th of January, I was visiting in my kitchen with some friends. Suddenly, I felt my face flush and I felt ill. In a matter of minutes, I was out cold. My friends carried me to the living room and placed a cold cloth on my head. They said I opened my eyes and stared for 15 minutes. When I came to, it was exactly 10:30 p.m. That night I was ill and vomited several times. I kept crying and thinking about my sister. Every time I thought about our mother, I felt depressed. The next morning at 7 a.m., my mother called. She was crying and extremely upset. She told me that my sister, who lived 200 miles away, had died suddenly the night before at exactly 10:30 p.m. Now that's a classic one. Now when does it take place? Well, usually it takes place when the geomagnetic activity is less intense. This is an example of a geomagnetic pattern recorded right here in our laboratory at Laurentian University. You can see the perturbations. This is a very active kind of night, a geomagnetically active kind of period. You're looking at various components here. On the other hand, on quiet nights, which is the next one, you can see the difference. In other words, when it's quiet, when it's geomagnetically quiet, the connections between all 7 billion brains have greater possibility. Classic example comes from an experimental study. Remember, the most important philosophy that human beings have ever developed has been science and the methodology of science. The most powerful and potent tool has been the experiment. This is an experimental kind of study in where individuals who are dreaming in one room and simply engaging in ordinary dreaming in another room, a person is looking at a picture, a target, a picture. And what we find, and this is the work done at the Maimonides Dream Hospital, what we found is that when individuals are dreaming and someone in another room is looking at a picture, under certain nights, when you look at the dream content is exactly what the picture was the other person was looking at. Notice that the black circles indicate that when the geomagnetic activity was quiet, very, very quiet, that's when the dream content of the dreamer corresponded with the details of the picture upon which the other person was concentrating. Well, think about that. Every time you sleep near someone, are they influencing your dreams? Or at a distance, for that matter. But those are correlational studies or experimental studies. Here's a more important question. Why don't these experiences occur more frequently? Or is your brain more like a television remote that is randomly changing channels and ever so often overlaps with the source? What would happen if a procedure was developed that allowed direct access to whole information, to all of it? Suppose there was a technology. And that's what we're talking about tonight.
All right, so that was the first part, guys. Like I said, I'm cutting them up into segments to make them more digestible. So super amazing, the concept of shared consciousness. And I like this professor because he presents it in a scientific way, and he does the scientific method. And it gets so fascinating as we go along. But I just want to say hi to everybody. We have Bay Theater Dave. So cool to see you in there. Team Smooth. Matrix Breaker 8. We have Little Miss Evil. Name. Unithotic. Am I saying this right? Unithic. I'm so sorry. I'm pretty bad. Badlander fan. Really good to see you. And counterinsurgent. Good to see you. I saw some other people. Oh yeah, Mama Hunter. Saw you. Debbie Rich. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for coming and hanging out. Please give me the thumbs up. And we're going to dive into this next part. So yeah, as he goes through this and understanding how our brains work and how we can actually affect those around us, it really starts to change how you perceive reality and life. And he even will dive into deeper parts about consciousness and a unified consciousness and what that can do and how we can actually change things globally. So it gets really exciting. But guys, thank you so much for joining. And I'm going to play the second part of No More Secrets.
Can the ability to access information at a distance be trained? And the answer is yes, it is, and we've trained it. One such person is Ingo Swann, who helped develop the phenomenon of remote viewing. Ingo Swann is the individual, and this is Ingo. Ingo Swann was involved with the development of this remote viewing for the Central Intelligence Agency for the United States many years ago. The idea is, can you access information at a distance? As opposed to saying it can't happen, suppose we say it does happen. You realize, let me ask you this. If I told you 200 years ago that I had a device that I could put to your ear and you could hear what was going on the other side of the Atlantic, you would say that's crazy. But now we call it a telephone. Right? If I told you 400 years ago that I had a device which allowed me to measure and represent your friend, and I could play it back long after he was dead and you could see that person, you would think it was magic. That's called filming. Suppose there is a technology that allows us to have access to every bit of information that's available in the geomagnetic field from all of your brains. That's what he did. He learned to identify experiences that originated primarily in his right hemisphere as pure images and experiences. Here are some examples while he was sitting in a closed chamber in our laboratory here at Laurentian University and asked to draw what experimenters were seeing based upon random selection of targets. So here's what we did. We had experimenters walk by a hallway and we would randomly give them a an area somewhere within 15 minutes of Laurentian University. They had 15 minutes to get there. They would simply look at the target. These were randomly selected targets. Let me give you just a few. This is where you begin drawing. Curved building, tall vegetation, angular, natural, breeze, cool, convex, motion of some kind, a sense of vista, a smokestack in the distance, arena, trees, sense of a conveyor, smell slightly bitter. Now what I've done here, I've simply typed out what he's written down. He was an artist. He was a postmortem artist as a part of his training. Car, more than one. Slight slope. Grotto. Mine. Entrance to. Round and large. Distant stack. Road. Now don't forget, he's sitting in a chamber now, and we're measuring his EEG. And we've enhanced its capacity with the technology I'm going to show you in just a few minutes. All right? 2 major cuts near a closure. Depression, circular. Something goes in. Motion or movement. Conveyance motion, cars. And what was the target? You all know what it was. The target was the experimenters had gone to see Science North. There's what he drew. That's what it looks like. He had no idea what was going on. These were randomly selected targets. I'm showing the ones that are most conspicuous. There are many others. Here's a bird's eye view. This is all published in scientific journals, incidentally, and you can access them by simply Googling it on the web.
Wow, so that's really, really cool. I realized it wasn't zoomed in. I should have zoomed it in for you, for you guys. But so it's showing the ability there. And so real quick, he mentioned Ingo Swann, and it says, yes, Michael Persinger and Ingo Swann collaborated on research related to remote viewing. Persinger published an article in 2001 that discussed the results of their work, which suggested measurable changes in brain activity, specifically bipolar okay, sorry, you guys gotta help me out. Electroencephalographic activity during Swann's remote viewing. So they were able to see things change. I think he's going to go into that. Persinger also investigated the potential impact of magnetic fields on remote viewing, suggesting that complex variable magnetic fields could disrupt the process or enhance it, which they're not saying here, but he will also get into that. So I saw a comment in here. Hold on. Mama Hunter, you say, I can't wrap my head around remote viewing. Well, if it works, if it happens, right, we could agree that it has to be working within the system that we are experiencing in the world around us, right? Something that scientists have been able to observe now is quantum entanglement, where one atom or something, I forgot, it's like a photon or something like that. Don't quote me on it. But what happens to that one and the other one that they separated from it, or they know is quantum entangled, it literally will happen to the other one simultaneously. It doesn't matter distance. So if we can observe this in something small, is it too far-fetched to think it can't happen on a grand scale? And if it's happening on a grand scale, maybe it's just so subtle that we don't notice it. And again, I'm a firm believer in, the secret societies that have hid certain truths from us. And I believe certain abilities, certain God-given abilities. They're not mystic and dark and whatever. They're actually God-given abilities. And Jesus will talk about these things of praying and meditating on things. If we're gathered in his name and we pray, if we are honorable in our heart in asking for the good to happen, God will hear those prayers. So these are all related. They're all related. Science doesn't quite like to admit it. And this guy, obviously, he was on the fringe. But yeah, so he was involved in that. And then also, before we get into it, just so you guys can see. So this is the CIA reading room, one of my favorite places to go. I'm a total geek for this. Just look up Acoustic Kitty. Let's look up Acoustic Kitty and you'll never be the same. Yes, it involves cats and other things. But anyways, so he mentioned Ingo Swann, and I typed in Stargate Ingo Swann. This is what you guys are going to find. I'm just going to read some of these titles. We're not going into it. A visit of Ingo Swann to a mesa. So a visit. Okay, let's go. Let's find some cool titles. Back from the Beyond. Parapsychology at Stanford Research Institute. The Search for Superman. Ooh, Grill Flame. That's connected to remote viewing, and I think Sunstreak. I think Sunstreak is the other one. Training program. Psychics pinpoint sunken wreck in 1,500 square mile of ocean. So here we go, guys. Security review of Mind Wars. So it's kind of exciting to see. This is how I take it. If our military was really involved in this, and their story is, oh, we spent millions and millions of dollars in this research and blah, 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 and we have all these records that show it worked, but it didn't work and we abandoned the project. Okay. Roger. Not. That's, yeah. So it's definitely spiderwebbed into other things, and I believe that all these things, like the data collection of our mind through things like the phone and earbuds and stuff, that is definitely going on, and they've mapped the human brain, and now they know how to turn it against us. But like Quast goes into, knowledge is power. And if you are aware, like if you use AI, for example, like he says, you're going to be able to spot, you're going to use AI, but then because you're going to use AI, you're going to see, where it's not so good in some areas and this and that, and you're not ignorant. Because see, ignorance is just, ignorant, like I've said before, is not a negative word. Ignorance isn't. It just means you lack knowledge. You are lacking in knowledge. And so this whole movement, MAGA, the Great Awakening, is about spreading knowledge to our fellow man so they can become equipped and aware and protect themselves from this new technology that's coming out. Side note, this, I'll play another one. This presentation by Michael Persinger, No More Secrets, he did this in 2011. He died, I believe... Let me see if I can see when he died. 2018. So it's like sad. He literally he did seminars there until his death. Like this guy was excited and he was convinced to do this. But anyways, so we're going to jump into the next one. This is part 3. Hopefully I don't replay the parts. Oh gosh, it'd be so embarrassing. All right, so here's part 3. No More Secrets.
Now, I want you to think about something, and that's the following. Just remember Alexander Graham Bell, the first time he generated a signal across the room. It was scratchy. He could barely hear it. But the point is, from that beginning of just a bit of information, now we have one of the most sophisticated technologies in the history of Western civilization. We have the telephone communication system. You've got to start somewhere, and then you perfect the technology. Okay, that's Ingo Swann. Was he always successful? Well, most of the time. However, the degree of accuracy was related to amount of 7 Hertz activity over his right hemisphere. Again, the right hemisphere, the one involved with your dreaming. This is the same frequency that the entire Earth generates. His accuracy was less when there were geomagnetic storms and the Earth's magnetic field was disturbed. So if the magnetic field was disturbed, he lost the ability. When you lost the connection, you lost the ability. For example, there's an actual EEG. Back in the days, we only had 3 channels. Okay, notice the red arrows, those are 7 Hertz. This is a unique pattern. You don't find it very often. And the number of these patterns were directly related to how accurate he was. So in other words, the more he showed that activity over the occipital right hemisphere, the more accurate he was in terms of the information at a distance. There's the ionosphere, and of course, generating between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere is a 7 Hertz pattern. And the more you get closer to that pattern, the more you seem to have access to everything around the Earth. For example, that 7 Hertz pattern not only has the same frequency as generated from the intrinsic aspect of your brain has a natural frequency. Guess what it is? 7 hertz. Based upon the fact that consciousness is recreated every 20 milliseconds, it's moving at about 4.5 meters per second. Just do a simple calculation of the circumference of your brain, it's about 7 hertz. And the intensities of both the magnetic and the electrical components for both this and your brain are identical, capable of resonance. Here we have an example, of course, from the sun to the earth. There's the earth's magnetic field. And of course, when there's a magnetic storm, you can see that you get marked perturbation and the connections are lost. Now, we're not the only species like this. For example, fish very often communicate with electrical signals, magnetic signals they generate. Thunderstorms will interfere with that connection, like having massive noise, and their behaviors are distorted. So we're not the only species. Now, here are some examples of ordinary people drawing pictures of what they experience about a target when they are exposed to geomagnetic-like fields. In other words, is it just one kind of person, or just some people? And the answer is anybody can do it if you expose them to the field. Here is the target picture hidden in another room. This was a target picture, very much like the Ingalls-Swann procedure. And here's what a university student exposed to the appropriate magnetic field drew. Look at the connections. Remember, this is a situation very much like early Bell, because it's very, very scratchy at this point, but look at the essentials. Go ahead and connect them. We can see, for example, the emphasis on the shape, the eye. Remember, this is hidden in an envelope. The actual mechanical kind of individual, you can see from the outline yellow. The most intense phenomena were these: when another person in another room is looking at a target, and at the same time as the second person is sharing the same magnetic field, the accuracy becomes greater. So in other words, if you have one person here, you generate a condition that produces the same kind of magnetic field that influences the brain at the consciousness recreation pattern. What you'll find, if whatever that person's looking at, the other person can actually draw accurately. Can the average person access distant information? At Laurentian University, we developed a technology by producing a device whereby the same complex magnetic fields are shared by two people separated at a distance. When that happens, the two brains become one. So here we have the actual technology. You can see one chamber. That's what we call the octopus. It's basically 8 solenoids that produce a accelerating configuration, a second derivative magnetic field. There's what it looks like. There's the person in one room. All right, with the octopus, there's a person in the other. Here's some examples. The actual target picture that one person is looking at is on the right hand. You've seen that as the bridge down here in Sudbury. What the other person's drawing, sitting in a separate room, and you can see the actual drawing, and you can actually see the letters or the words up there, and we've amplified them for you. Motion, bright long, vertical lines, wormhole, crowd, flower, explosion, passing stuff moving through. The essential aspects of that hidden target have been extracted and now are being shared by the two different people who share the same magnetic field. Their brains, both those brains, are now effectively one.
So beautiful. I'm just a sucker for this stuff, guys. We are all connected. Like, okay, there's so much to unpack about that, and I'm not going to spend forever on it, but we share the same frequency as the Earth. Whoa. Like, whoa. Why? How? It's magical. It's amazing. Have you ever heard about those astronauts when they get away from Earth? You know, even they exercise and this and that, but they start to kind of like not do so well. It's because they're out of the field of the Mother Earth, And I am a Christian, 100%. But the concept of the Mother Earth, of like, this is our dwelling, this is where we came from, the dirt. It says that we were formed from the clay and the dirt. And this is also kind of proven through science. You know, when they break it down, we are pretty much a bunch of dirt and rock and minerals and sand and boom. But it's the life, the heartbeat, or we can call it the resonance, the frequency. What is this? What is that? And we're going to go into even, we're going to go into memories. Because not only the conscious of you thinking right now, but what about something that just happened that I was thinking about, like when I said goodbye to Brad? I'm thinking about that right now. Is that stored in my mind, or is that stored in a resonance that someone could access? Right? So this is why this is also a controversial topic. And I like his title, The No More Secrets, because if this happens, there will be no more secrets. And we can go into some really crazy deep stuff, into biblical things, biblical prophecies and stuff. I will not do that right now because I kind of want to stand focused with this. But Bay Theater Dave says, for the gifts, well, this is from the Bible, but he posted it. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. I hope I said that right. Irrevocable, I mean, that means that it cannot be changed. It cannot be removed, right? And I love that. If these things are here, they always have been here. It's just been hidden from us. And the more I research, I have this, I always get this feeling like, how dare they took it away from us? I tell Brad, I'll be like sitting there, I'll be like looking at all this cool stuff. And like, it's usually what the CIA has been doing. And I really detest the CIA. But the one thing about them is they kept good documents. So I'm reading, but I do not support any of, especially their unethical things. Ugh, murderers. Anyways, that's also another story. But I really like that. It's irrevocable. It cannot be changed. Tracer says, Jesus said, when more than one gather in my name in the spirit and pray to the Father, he will hear from heaven. It's like a tunnel opening straight to God. Now, this is great, Tracer, because we're going to get into this. This is called the shared resonant frequency. And they're going to get into this one guy. I don't think it's the Swan guy, but it's another dude, through the Central Intelligence Agency that they found had capabilities. They find that when he was close to a person, well, I probably shouldn't give away, but basically, when he's close to a person in the room, things would start to happen. And actually, I won't spill the beans because that's actually really cool how the guy goes into that. So anyways, can't jump ahead of myself. So guys, if you really like this, please give me a thumbs up. Yes, I am here going solo. I didn't say that in the beginning. I should have. Brad has been, back in New Jersey, figuring out everything else that needed to be done. And he kind of needed to physically be there for, all kinds of stuff, like signing things and all these things. So that's what he's doing. But he did have a meetup at one point, which looked really awesome in New Jersey. And you guys sent, there was a video that he said was really great. Everyone is having an awesome time. And I love that that's what GARTs bring, right? Because again, and this falls into what we're talking about here. When we gather, we charge each other. I mean, I've heard people say, like, after they go to a GART, they feel like, oh, yeah, there's hope, community, we got this, patriotism, pride. Let's stand up for, what's true and right and morals and God. And it's just great, right? And you'll usually come away with things maybe you haven't heard before or topics, that have pushing back views like G Money and Ash. I always love it, right? Some people are like, oh, I don't like that. But I tend to find it good because it brings someone's, they're both really firm about the topics, right? And how they feel about it. But in them debating it, you find, oh, how do I feel? Oh, well, that was actually a good, well, he had a good point too, or Ash, so you start to literally grow your mind. You are taking in more information and you are starting to, grow and develop. And that's what we want, right? Because truth is power and truth is information. And we are fighting a digital battle. It's an information war. And I don't know, like that one CIA document. What was that titled? I was surprised. It was Mind Wars. Okay. And then, these were in the 70s. So just keep that in mind. All the stuff he's even talking about right here, they were studying and practicing this in the 70s. The CIA, the Defense Department, and the Army. And to me, I'm like, oh, they're all just in there doing whatever. But there is a difference, and they all had different programs. So anyways, this is part 4. I believe I'm on part 4. I don't want to play the same one twice. All right, part 4 of No More Secrets.
But the effect extends experience. If both people separated by distance share the same configuration of magnetic field, a light flash, just a light flash, to one person affects the brain activity of the other sitting in the dark in another room. So what we found is that we can connect it to actual light. The photon emission energy from the brain while a person is sitting in the dark is about 10,000 times less than the stars on a cloudy night, but we can measure it with photomultiplier tubes. However, it's 100 times more intense than the energy from the cosmic rays that pervade the universe. Now, I know you're thinking that this is really, really weak, but let me do an experiment real quick, okay? Effectively, you're listening to me right now, and the sounds you're hearing are in the order of about a millipascal in terms of pressure. That's what you're listening. About 40 to 50 decibels, a millipascal. And presumably you're listening to me. Right now, above you, there's over 100 kilopascals of pressure. 1 billion times more pressure on your body right now than the pressure associated with me talking with you and you listening. Can you hear the atmosphere? It's 1 billion times more. Of course you can't. It's not the intensity. It's the pattern. The pattern is the critical thing. So never underestimate the importance of the pattern. It's not the intensity. And furthermore, if we take something like this, like one of these nice loaves of cinnamon, and I drop it just like that. I dropped it this way. That's about a microjoule of energy. Now, for you to see a light in the dark, that only takes about 10 to the minus 17th joules. That's a decimal point followed by 16 zeros and a 1, which means this is a microjoule, which means that energy from dropping that right now would be enough to light up every eye of every human being on this planet. The critical thing is the energy and the pattern that detects it. Never think bigness is important. So, here's what happens. If, for example, we have one person in one room having a flashing light, another person in another room completely in the dark, and they only share the magnetic field, a special kind of configurational magnetic field that produces a synthetic consciousness, making both brains the same. When there is no flash in the other room, this person has theirs on the left, that's what's coming off the side of their head. If the person in the other room is seeing a flashing light, an ordinary, dull, flashing light, the person sitting in the dark, their brain also generates light because they're connected, even at a distance. Is there evidence of information transfer? We are now measuring photon emission from the human brain. That's how we think it's working. And you can see, if we took you, for example, and we ask you to sit down inside of a quiet room, and on the left hemisphere, the left side of the brain, right hemisphere, right side of the brain, notice that when a person is simply relaxing and just thinking about casual thoughts, for example, like something easy and refreshing, like how many hours I'm going to study tonight. On the other hand, if on the focus you say, okay, now I want you to think of white light. Just think of white light. Right? That's all you have to do. Notice the left hemisphere doesn't do anything. The right hemisphere, if you're relaxing, doesn't differ. The vertical axis is the amount of energy, and I can tell you what it is. It's about 10 to the minus 11 watts per meter squared. All right. You can't see it. You need a machine, a photomultiplier tube to see it. But notice on the right hemisphere, when you ask a person to just think of white light, notice that under focus on the right hemisphere, there's almost a doubling of output. That's right. And now we know in neuroscience that it's very likely, Bocan and other people have actually shown this, that there's light emission from retina, that when you're actually thinking about white light, There's just not action potentials and neurons firing. There's actually photons being emitted within your brain. Right? Actual photons, and we can measure them. The minute you have photons, you have access to almost everything. Right? Now, when there are photons involved, the phenomenon of entanglement becomes real. This means that what happens to one person is reflected in another, regardless of space or time. Here's a animation of what we're talking about. That's entanglement. In other words, entanglement means that effectively, the minute you have two people connected, photons here and photons here, we really don't know right now when that photon is flashing in the other room, is it the same photon that shows up in the other person's brain instantaneously, or there's simply entanglement. But if you have entanglement, you understand what that means. That means you have information at a distance. You change something here, you change something here instantaneous. Already physicists are doing this. They call it teleportation because they're a bit more dramatic. All right. But in actual fact, they've already done it, up to over 100 kilometers. Change the polarity on one, the other one changes instantaneously. That's the first stage to having information from everywhere.
Wow. Oh, it's just crazy, right? It's crazy. And we know because of, if people have been researching quantum entanglement or things of that nature, you're going to realize that that stuff is real. They have been measuring it. So for the shortness of time, because I want to fit everything as a complete episode, I'm going to play 5 and 6 together. It's only going to total like 7 minutes. So it's going to be cool. But real quick on what he just said, there's light emission from the retina. When you simply think of white light, there are actual photons being emitted within your brain, and they can measure them. Whoa! We are light beings. Like, how else do I say that? Like, we are literally beings of light. And we're going to go a little bit more into that, or he will, of what that is and that the entanglement that he's talking about. So you have access to everything when you have photons, is what he said. You have entanglement. You have what happens to one happens to the other. And if we are emitting photons, we can change things, right? So this is what we're going to get into, like how consciousness and how we perceive things as a whole, as a group, as where we go when we go all, as the golden age, right? The great awakening, it's going to be biblical. This all connects. It all connects. Like I said, I don't have time. But I think you know where I'm going with this. So I'm going to play part 5 and part 6. Guys, thank you so much. Give me a thumbs up, and we're going to play these. I will say my goodbyes because we're going to play cool things on the outro. Like, that's why, is because there's a few more little nuggets that I think you guys will like. All right, so check out the rest of this lecture. And his name is Michael Persinger, and he's speaking at the Laurentian University in Canada. So if you want to look this guy up, he did pass away, but his research is sound. And, science, the scientific method, it doesn't lie. So it's super exciting. All right, I will see you guys on the other side.
Now, if one has the technology and access the appropriate patterns shared by other brains, information can be accessed. We can amplify, concentrate, and control what has been happening only occasionally for centuries. Now think about it. Like watching lightning. We did it for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years as a species. And then we mastered electricity. Look at the difference. We watched birds fly, wondering what it would be like. We never did have wings. We never developed them. But now we can fly. We call it an airplane. If you can imagine it, it can be done. And that's why, because the brain is matter. It's based upon the physical principles of the universe. And if you have that capacity to imagine it, that means the potential is there for it to be done. Because our brains are reflective of the essential aspects of the matter of this universe. Now, Sean Harabands, a classic example of extraction of information. This is the man who knows your memory. There's Dr. Webster actually extracting some blood and actually injecting some radioactive material into Mr. Harabanz. We were the first to demonstrate that when he's engaging in reading another person's memory, it's not all hocus pocus. What really happens, a part of his brain that's been different from the time he was born shows an increase in activity as measured by single photon emission computerized tomography. Very specific to the right parietal lobe. Here's Sean Harabanz, again an animation. He's looking at a picture. All he has to do is look at a picture of the person about whom he's talking, and he begins to talk about the person's past, often embarrassing things that only they know. How can that be done unless you have access to memory? Right? It's not written anywhere. We made an extraordinary discovery about Harabanz's brain. The energy associated when we measured, don't forget, the experiment, most powerful tool we've got. You can speculate until you get extraordinarily enthusiastic to the point of inebriation, but unless you've got the experiment, you don't know. So we've actually did experiments. We brought him up here. We measured him repeatedly. Okay. We made an extraordinary discovery about Harabanz's brain, the energy associated with the small decrease in the Earth's magnetic field around his right hemisphere. We were flabbergasted when we put our magnetometers around his head. His brain actually distorts the local magnetic field. Small amounts, but measurable and reliable. Okay? It was equal to the energy of the light emission from his brain. You think that light emission was interesting. You should have seen the photomultiplier tubes when we put it around his head. The needles are visibly showing increases in activity. And the more the photons increased, the more the magnetic field dropped. And that energy was equal to the activity of the neurons. We actually calculated the number of neurons that he was showing activity by looking at our quantitative EEG. In other words, conservation of energy. The longer Mr. Harabanz was close to the subject, the more the subject's brain began to show the patterns of Harabanz's brain. Let me give you an example. Harabanz and the subject. This is our EEG. Okay, single channel, obviously we do 1020. Okay. But notice that as he sits there, they become more and more synchronous. At that point, when they become synchronous, he actually begins to extract information and begins to tell information to the other person, the person sitting there, information that is only they know about. Now, if you haven't heard of Harabanz, well, let me put it this. There used to be an ex-leader of Iraq who hid in a hole. Guess who gave the information for where the U.S. government found him? It was Sean Harabanz. The point is, if you have access to information, you can get it from anywhere. But we have to know what the mechanism is. Well, right now you say, that's unbelievable, Doc. That's so far-fetched. Well, let me ask you this. If you now have a radio system that's really, really good, you can pick up a channel from anywhere in the world. 500 years ago, if I'd have told you that, you'd have said that was crazy. During the connection, there was enhanced brain power at 7 hertz over his right hemisphere. You can see the red arrow. That refers to specifically the 7 hertz band coming off his brain. Remember the 7 hertz? Intrinsic pattern to the Earth itself, the same pattern that Swan had, and seems to be something fundamental. Now, the 7 hertz is tied to something called the hippocampus, the gateway to memory. And if you access that, you access all the information that's being consolidated in your experience. Remember, your memories are nothing more than synaptic patterns. That's all they really are. And the gateway to that is the hippocampus. Is there another homogeneous field to which all of us are exposed? There are the communication systems of the web, internet, and the massive electromagnetic matrix that it creates. I'm just giving you one. There's others, you know. Let's take a good look at it. That's sort of a diagram of it. You can see that effectively right now communication systems are so pervasive that we all are immersed in this background that we call communication systems. You know, interesting thing, at one time we used to have radar sent out and reflected back in order to see things at a distance. Now the electromagnetic density of all the communication systems are so great, they generate a shadow. We don't even have to generate radar emission anymore. We're living within the shadow, quite literally, of a massive electromagnetic field generated by communication systems, which means we're immersed, all of us, in a homogeneous secondary field called the communication system, called the modern technology. And much of it is pulsed, very much within the range of the brain, the human brain. So I ask you this question: what would it mean if you and everyone else had access to the information of every other brain on this planet? I want you to think about that for a second. In fact, I'll repeat it. What would happen, or what would it mean if you and everyone else had access to the information of every other brain on this planet? So there's 7 billion of us roughly. What would happen? First of all, knowledge is the ultimate power. And as you know, revolutions occur when about 50%, and this is historical, when about 50% of the population becomes educated, that's when you have revolutions, historically. When they become literate. That's why people are often, and dictators are often against literacy or access to free information. But what would happen? Knowledge is the ultimate power. First of all, the control of populations is based upon a few having discretionary information over the many. Call them governments sometimes, or administrations. Economic advantage derives from proprietary information. If everybody had equal access and knew what the other person was thinking, do you think there'd be rich people? Think there'd be poor people? And finally, the success of governments depends upon sequestered facts. Do you really think governments could have their power that they have right now if you knew everything they were doing? Of course not. We have seen the impact of leaking information through the web, haven't we? It's enough to make some people want to take the person who leaked it and bring them back and basically prosecute them for treason or some other kind of confabulated reason. What would happen if you had access to all information from every other human brain through a new technology that is now being developed? And the answer is no more secrets. Thank you.
Wow. And he's right. There would be no more secrets. Woo! Now, since, we're live and I have a little bit of time, which is good. Okay. So his I'm going to ask you guys, because I love just the conversation that we have. I'll do it for like a few minutes here. He says, would there be rich people? Would there be poor people? Would there be governments? And if the human consciousness, if we are choosing to follow, and this is the balance that General Quast talked about, we're choosing to follow what is good, true, and light, but there are people that will do the other, right? So when this is all revealed, and I do believe there's more good people out there than bad, hopefully the consciousness of everyone will have begun. This is a theoretical idea, okay, guys? This is just this theoretical, but into what he's saying is that all of us raising our consciousness and now all becoming aware of everything and becoming aware of the elite's plan and all the torture and everything that it did on everybody. Because if it's memory, then we're going to get all of it. It's going to be like, we're going to be like, whoa, right? If, like, theoretically, if it's like a physical thing that happened, they wouldn't make it. We'd all call them out. We all know who did it. We'd all know what happened. And this kind of falls into possible Bible prophecy, if you have understanding about the topic. But even if not, it's cool. You can totally look into it, and you're going to see some parallels about all of this, the awakening and the coming of Jesus. And there's just a lot of parallels. We've got a lot of technology stuff going on that now falls totally into Bible prophecy that can totally be done now, that people couldn't even theorize 100 years ago, just like General Quast has talked about with technology, and this guy as well. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Because it's just wild to imagine a world where consciousness would be shared. And like I said, could it be used against us? I really don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it's definitely something to think about and consider. I like how he said, when about 50% of the population becomes educated, historically, that's when you have a revolution. Now, we think about revolutions often like bloody things that happen. You don't necessarily have to do that. It can be a revolution of breaking mental chains, propaganda chains, trauma bonds, right? These are all things that keep us in a lower level frequency. They can measure it. You can measure it. A depressed person, certain parts in their brain are going more than others, which causes an emotional negative state on the body. And it's just wild. When you start really looking into this, you realize your state of mind is everything, which is really your soul. It's you. We have our brain, and that's cool, and our brain's doing it. But I like how he's bringing up the concept of even memory and thought. Is it a physical thing, or is it being housed in the brain? And that's where we're dwelling, but we're all connected to a field that is the exact same field as the earth. And, and from the biblical standpoint, it's just so beautiful to see it from that angle. And it just really helps you understand just the beauty and the perfection of everything around us. It's beautiful. It's amazing. So guys, thank you so much. Jennifer Ray, Abby, I love your shirt. Well, this is actually Brad's shirt. I stole it. I was like, I want to be like lazy today. Top keck. Yeah. For all my froggy friends out there. Love you all. All right. So with that, I'm going to lead you guys out with a clip of General Quast again, and then another cool clip by Wayne Dyer, where he shares a philosophy and theory of the 100th monkey effect. And I've played the 100th monkey effect before, but I feel now with everything you guys have watched, this is now going to enclose everything all together. Like we just, in the beginning, we watched Patrick Henry and his mindset and how he felt, and his passion changed the future. And now think about Trump and all the stuff he's doing. Like he is another brave patriot that is just going out and he's doing what's right. And so we need to support that. But understand that it's all about this. It's all about this. This is what they want. This is what they want. So don't give it to them. You're better than that. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Please give you a thumbs up. And also remember, I'll be leading you out with a few nuggets. So stay for that. But then after that, please head over to Badlands Story Hour. They're doing the final countdown. It's the final countdown. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do. No, do the jump dance. Do-do-do-do-do-do. All right. Okay, I've made a fool of myself now. All right, guys. Thank you so much. And enjoy this on the way out, and I will see you next time. Peace.
I will tell you that we truly do have the potential of throwing this off, and that the good people of this world have access to truth, and they can organize and throw this corruption into the prisons or into the trash heap of history. It will never go away totally, because there will always be evil people. Mm-hmm. But this is why I say it is so damn exciting to be alive today, because we are in the middle of an epic change. Mm-hmm. And most epic changes are riddled with violence and destruction, like going from the kingdoms and the serfdoms into the industrial age. And the industrial age and World War I and World War II into the information age. We have a leader in President Trump that is trying to usher in a change where the American people are not lied to anymore by people that want to maintain control. That we revive the economy to build a golden age, truly by unleashing these innovations that have been snuffed out and quenched and thrown a blanket on because of the military-industrial congressional complex of lobbyists lying to congressional members, and congressional members fearful of their political future, taking money into their coffers of election and ignoring the technology because they're not willing to stand up to their people and say there's a better way. We can shine a light on all this corruption. And it's amazing how the spirit of innovation and renewal and revival and even forgiveness can be ushered in with information that's in the pocket of every human being on the planet.
The 100th Monkey is a philosophy based upon the writing of a man named Rupert Sheldrake. Rupert Sheldrake lives in England, and he has written a book, which I've been studying, called A New Science of Life. And it was voted by the American Academy of Physics as the book most likely to be burned by their academy. All right? Because it is so blasphemous and absurd and silly, the notions inside of it. What Rupert Sheldrake is suggesting is that memory, which is what we can recall of all the things that have happened to us, is simply not stored in the brain. It's just not stored in the brain. All kinds of physical evidence like where they do experiments with cutting out pieces of the brain, a lot of ways of scientific evidence of establishing this belief. Just let it in. Don't endorse it, just let it in. Don't bite off my finger. Just look to where it's pointing for a few minutes, okay? The notion is that if memory, of course, is not stored in our brain, then where is it? Right? The philosophy is very simple, that all members of a species are connected together through what they call morphogenetic fields, just very much like magnets. And these fields surround all human beings. The 100th monkey is the number, the 100th monkey. Off the coast of Japan, there's an island. And they took a group of these monkeys from one species, and they put sweet potatoes out there on the beach. And they watched the monkeys. And the monkeys began to wash the sweet potatoes in a certain way that was peculiar to this species. And they began to eat them in a way that was peculiar to this species. After a given amount of time, when a certain number of monkeys within that species began to do that, the same behavior began to crop up in monkeys of the same species on islands 200 and 300 miles away. Question is, how did it happen? How could that have happened? And that's, without going into all the details of that, if there is truth that all members of a species are connected, that all human beings are connected as well. And if all of us are connected in some way that we don't understand, but in fact are connected, then I'm not here to tell you that you have to be thinking positive thoughts because it'll improve your life. I'm here to tell you that you have an obligation because you could be depressing somebody in Uruguay right now by thinking negative thoughts. It's true. Now just think about it. Just let it in. The highest form of ignorance is to reject something you know nothing about. That's the highest form you can get to. We know so little about this whole idea. But what we do know is that when human beings begin to think in positive, healthy ways, that they reduce certain endorphins into the chemistry of your blood. This is from Anatomy of an Illness, Norman Cousins. And that when you think positive, happy, loving, laughing thoughts, there's a different chemistry that goes into your body than when you think depressing, negative, anguishing, despairing thoughts. And that thinking the way that you decide to think has a dramatic effect on your chemistry and on your physiology and on your health as a human being. And that we know that when they did the artificial heart transplants, when they were looking for all the people up in Kentucky, who they were going to pick, there were many, many volunteers because a lot of these people only have a few weeks left to live. So if they could get a few more months, they were very willing to be experimented. The number one criteria was the will to live. What kind of an attitude does this human being have? How do they think? Because we do not want somebody who gives up on life, who is going to feel bad, who is going to be telling himself that he shouldn't be in this position. So as you begin to think about the possibility, here's what Ken Keyes did in The 100th Monkey. he said, and the 100th Monkey is about nothing I've said so far. That's just all what I learned through my own research and my own reading and so on. The 100th Monkey is a book about nuclear war. The belief is this: if enough people on our planet think there's going to be a nuclear holocaust and believe that it's going to happen, we are going to create it by the way that we think. When a critical mass, and that's the theory, the 100th Monkey, when you get to a certain number of people thinking anything, then it begins to spread to the rest of us all over our planet, and we begin to act upon those collective thoughts. The thinking is, who knows, I'm open to it, that we are not only connected to everybody who's alive, but everybody who ever has been, and everybody who ever will be. That we may all in some way be connected. So that if we want, the number one thing in the Hunger Project is that we are trying to raise the consciousness of the world, to help people to understand that starvation is something we cannot tolerate any longer. We won't have it. We won't think of it as something that is inevitable. What is happening now is people are beginning to say, what can I do? How can I change that? The same thing is true with nuclear war. If you want to think about raising your children, my friends, what more important parental task do you have than to make sure that our world is a place that's going to be inhabitable for our children and our grandchildren? As Victor Hugo said, there is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And we can make any idea have its time come by collectively thinking in these ways. And imagine that we're all connected like this. Imagine